You know that sensation when you open your banking app and instead of panic closing it immediately, you actually feel calm? Like when you stop mentally calculating whether that latte is affordable, or if grocery shopping means surviving on instant noodles until next payday? There's a precise threshold where this transformation occurs, and it's not what conventional wisdom suggests. Most financial advisors will insist you need $1 million net worth to feel prosperous, or that 6 figures is the golden ticket, but they're overlooking something crucial. There's a far more attainable milestone that fundamentally revolutionizes your relationship with money. Once you reach it, your entire financial reality shifts. That threshold is $20,000. I'm Nick, and I dedicate an unreasonable amount of mental energy to money psychology, wealth mechanics, and why certain individuals seem to build fortunes effortlessly while others remain trapped in identical financial patterns for decades. If you're interested in understanding the genuine machinery behind wealth creation, rather than simply hoping circumstances magically improve, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps reshape your financial perspective. The invisible barrier nobody talks about. Before diving into why $20,000 is the real game changer, let me pose a question. When you contemplate building wealth, what images come to mind? Perhaps you envision some trust fund beneficiary who never experienced financial stress, or maybe you picture someone grinding relentlessly for years, slowly accumulating wealth dollar by dollar. The reality is, wealth building operates completely differently than most people assume. Here's the truth. There are specific financial thresholds functioning like invisible barriers. Once you cross them, the game's rules fundamentally change. $20,000 represents the first major threshold separating those who will build substantial wealth from those who will spend their entire existence living paycheck to paycheck. The astonishing part, most people don't even realize this threshold exists. The boulder on the hill. Consider it this way. If you've ever attempted pushing a massive boulder uphill, you understand that initiation is the hardest phase. You're straining, sweating, making minimal progress, questioning whether success is even possible. But once you build sufficient momentum, something magical occurs. The boulder begins moving faster, and eventually, when you reach the summit, it rolls down the opposite side almost effortlessly. $20,000 is that pivotal point where your financial boulder finally crests the hill. Everything preceding this point feels like pushing uphill against gravity. Everything following this point feels like gravity working in your favor. The brain science behind the magic. Here's where it gets genuinely fascinating, and this will probably surprise you. The difference isn't merely mathematical. It's not simply that you possess more money to invest or that your returns are larger in absolute terms. The real transformation happens in your brain. When you lack saved money, your brain operates in what psychologists term survival mode. Every financial decision gets filtered through fear and scarcity. You accept the first job offer that materializes, even if it's terrible, because you cannot afford selectivity. You remain in situations you despise because departure feels excessively risky. You agree to things you don't want because you need the income. This transcends mere practicality or responsibility. When you're in survival mode, your brain literally cannot contemplate growth and opportunity. It's like attempting to plan a vacation while your house is burning. Your mental bandwidth is completely consumed by immediate threats and short-term survival. But something extraordinary happens when you cross that $20,000 threshold. Suddenly, your brain has space to think differently. Instead of asking, "How do I survive until the next paycheck?" you start asking, "How can I multiply this money?" Instead of being reactive to whatever financial crisis emerges, you become proactive about wealth construction. Research from Vanguard demonstrates that having nearly $2,000 in emergency savings increases your financial well-being by 21%. $2,000? That's less than most people spend on a vacation or premium laptop. But that modest buffer creates a massive psychological transformation because it moves you out of pure survival mode. When you expand that emergency fund to 3 to 6 months of living expenses, which for most people lands approximately around $20,000, you gain another 13% boost in financial well-being. More importantly, you've now created sufficient breathing room for your brain to start contemplating wealth building instead of merely wealth preservation. The mathematics of acceleration. Here's where the calculations start getting genuinely exciting. Suppose you're saving $1,000 monthly and earning an 8% return on your investments. Reaching your first $20,000 requires approximately 19 months of consistent saving and investing. That's a year and a half of discipline, sacrifice, and delayed gratification. It's not easy, and frankly, most people abandon the effort somewhere along the way. But here's the mind-blowing part. Your second $20,000 doesn't require another 19 months. It only takes about 17 months. Why? Because now you've got that initial $20,000 working alongside your monthly contributions, generating its own returns. Think about this for a moment. You performed the identical amount of work, saved the same amount monthly, assumed the same level of investment risk, but you eliminated 2 full months from the timeline simply because you had more capital working for you. That's the power of compound interest starting to activate. By the time you're pursuing your third $20,000, the timeline compresses even further. Your money is doing an increasing share of the heavy lifting while you're contributing the same effort. And when you reach the really substantial numbers, the acceleration becomes almost absurd. Once you hit $400,000 in your investment portfolio, you can generate your next $20,000 in just 5 months. The identical amount that took you nearly 2 years to save initially is now happening automatically through your investments. That first milestone feels impossible, but every subsequent milestone gets progressively easier. It's not about secret investments. Now, you might be thinking that wealthy people access some exclusive investment realm that regular folks cannot touch. Like there are elite hedge funds or special opportunities that only unlock once you reach certain wealth levels. And while there's some validity to that at the ultra high end, it's not what's driving this $20,000 phenomenon. The real secret is much simpler and honestly much more encouraging. It's just fundamental mathematics working in your favor. When you invest $1,000 and it grows 10% annually, you make $100. Take that exact same 10% growth rate and apply it to $10,000. And suddenly you're looking at $1,000 in profit from the identical investment. Same time frame, same level of risk. This is why reaching $20,000 feels like such a turning point. Up until that point, your investment returns feel almost insignificant because you're working with smaller amounts. A 10% return on $2,000 is $200 nice, but not exactly life-changing. But a 10% return on $20,000 is $2,000. Now we're talking about money that actually matters. When you've got $20,000 sitting in investments earning 8% annually, that's $1,600 flowing into your account over the course of a year without you lifting a finger. Money you didn't have to earn through your job. Money that appeared because your existing capital was working on your behalf. The investment strategy isn't any more sophisticated than what someone with $1,000 can utilize. You can purchase the exact same index funds, use identical brokerages, follow the same basic principles. The only difference is scale, and that scale transforms small percentage wins into genuine financial progress. The identity transformation. But here's the aspect that most people completely overlook, and it might be the most crucial point in this entire discussion. When you save $20,000, you've actually accomplished something far more valuable than merely accumulating money in a bank account. You've fundamentally rewired your brain and built the most important financial habit you'll ever develop. This might sound like self-help rhetoric, but stay with me because this is where things get genuinely practical. Think about what it actually requires to save $20,000 if you're starting from zero. Unless you're making extraordinary money or living rent-free, this demands serious discipline. You had to track where every dollar was going. You had to decline things you wanted so you could set money aside instead. You had to resist the temptation to spend your savings on whatever shiny object captured your attention that week. Most importantly, you had to do all of this consistently for months or even years. And here's the kicker. You proved to yourself that you can control your money instead of letting it control you. You became the type of person who can delay gratification when it genuinely matters. That's not just a financial skill, that's a life skill. This identity shift is enormous because it affects every financial decision you make going forward. Before you had $20,000 saved, buying a $4 coffee might have required mental gymnastics about whether you could afford it. After you hit $20,000, you're not stressing over the small stuff anymore because you know you have your priorities aligned. You've proven you can make the significant sacrifices when necessary. From threats to opportunities. But there's another psychological shift that occurs at this level that most people don't discuss. You start seeing opportunities instead of just threats. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, every unexpected expense feels like a catastrophe. Your car needs repairs, your laptop dies, your rent increases. These aren't opportunities, they're financial emergencies that derail your entire month. But when you have $20,000 in the bank, these same events become minor inconveniences at worst. Your car needs repairs, annoying, but not catastrophic. Your laptop dies. Time to upgrade to something superior, your rent goes up. Maybe it's time to finally search for a better place or negotiate your salary. Even better, you start noticing opportunities that were always present but you couldn't capitalize on before. Your friend mentions they're launching a business and seeking investors. Before, you would have thought, that sounds interesting, and moved on. Now you can actually evaluate whether it's worth investing $5,000. A compelling deal appears on a rental property that needs some work. Before, you would have scrolled past it on Zillow and maybe felt slightly envious. Now you can analyze the numbers and determine if it makes sense as an investment. Your boss mentions there's a conference in another city that could be excellent for your career, but the company won't cover it. Before, you would have made excuses about why you can't afford to attend. Now you can assess the potential return on investment. This is what wealthy people mean when they say money goes to money. It's not some cosmic conspiracy where the universe rewards people who already have cash. It's that having money provides options, and options create more opportunities to generate money. The big decisions versus small decisions shift. Here's something else that happens around the $20,000 mark that will make you question everything you thought you understood about budgeting. You start caring less about small expenses and more about substantial ones. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but hear me out. When you're broke, you obsess over every purchase. Should I buy the name brand cereal or the generic version? Is it worth spending $3 on coffee when I could make it at home? Should I get the premium gas or the regular? These decisions consume mental energy because every dollar feels precious. But when you have a solid financial foundation, you realize these micro decisions are largely irrelevant. The difference between spending $3 on coffee versus making it at home is maybe $1,000 annually if you're really going overboard. That's not nothing, but it's not going to make or break your financial future either. What matters are the big decisions: where you live, what you drive, how much you save, where you invest. These choices can swing your net worth by tens of thousands of dollars over time. So instead of agonizing over whether to buy the organic bananas, you focus your energy on optimizing your housing costs, maximizing your income, and ensuring your investment strategy is solid. This shift in focus is incredibly liberating because it frees up mental bandwidth for the decisions that actually matter. You stop sweating the small stuff and start thinking strategically about wealth building. Career leverage. Walking away money. Now, let's discuss what happens to your career once you hit this milestone, because this is where things get genuinely interesting. Having $20,000 saved doesn't just change your relationship with money, it changes your relationship with work. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're essentially imprisoned in whatever job you currently hold. Your boss could be terrible, your coworkers could be toxic, the work could be mind-numbing, but you can't leave because you need that next paycheck to survive. This puts you in an incredibly weak negotiating position. You can't ask for a raise because you're afraid they might terminate you. You can't push back on unreasonable demands because you need the job more than they need you. You can't explore other opportunities because taking time off for interviews feels excessively risky. You're stuck, and everyone knows it. But $20,000 changes the entire dynamic. Suddenly, you have what I call walking away money. You could quit tomorrow and survive for months while you find something better. This doesn't mean you should be reckless or burn bridges unnecessarily, but it means you're negotiating from a position of strength instead of desperation. This psychological shift affects everything about how you approach your career. You start asking for the raise you deserve because the worst they can say is no, and you'll be fine either way. You push back on unreasonable requests because you're not afraid of the consequences. You explore new opportunities because you can afford to take some risks. Here's what's genuinely crazy. Often you don't even need to use your walking away money. Just having it changes your entire demeanor at work. You become more confident, more assertive, more willing to take on challenging projects. And guess what happens when you show up differently? People notice. Suddenly, you're getting better assignments, more recognition, And yes, more money. It's like having a secret superpower that you hope you never have to use, but knowing it's there changes everything about how you operate, and the best part, the more confident and successful you become at work, the faster you build wealth, which provides you even more options and confidence. It's a positive feedback loop that accelerates over time. The critical mistake most people make. But here's where most people mess this up, and I see it constantly. They hit $20,000, feel that psychological shift, and then immediately spend it on something foolish. Maybe they decide they deserve a new car since they've been so disciplined. Or they take an expensive vacation because they've earned it, or they use it as a down payment on a house they can't really afford. Don't do this. That $20,000 is not a reward for good behavior. It's the foundation of your entire financial future. It's the seed that grows into generational wealth if you're patient enough to let it compound. And here's something that will probably make you laugh or cry, depending on your current situation. The average person spends more money on their car over their lifetime than it would take to achieve complete financial independence. Think about that for a second. Between car payments, insurance, maintenance, and fuel, most people are spending $600 to $800 every single month on transportation. Over a 40-year period, that's easily $400,000 or more just to get from point A to point B. Meanwhile, they're complaining that they can't afford to save for retirement. It's like watching someone spend a fortune on a gym membership they never use while complaining they can't afford to eat healthy food. Here's the thing that makes this even more absurd. The moment you drive a new car off the lot, it loses about 20% of its value. So you're not just spending money, you're actively destroying wealth. Compare that to investing the same amount in a diversified portfolio. Instead of watching your money evaporate, you're watching it multiply. The opportunity cost mindset. This is where having $20,000 saved completely changes your perspective on major purchases. Instead of thinking, can I afford the monthly payment? You start thinking, what is this really costing me in terms of opportunity? That $30,000 car isn't just $30,000. It's $30,000 that could have grown to over $200,000 in your investment account over 20 years. Suddenly, driving a reliable used car doesn't feel like a sacrifice anymore. It feels like a strategic choice that's funding your future freedom. And here's the beautiful irony. The person driving the flashy new car is probably stressed about money, while the person driving the older Honda is quietly building wealth and sleeping better at night. This mindset shift extends to every major financial decision you make. Housing, education, vacations, hobbies, everything gets filtered through the lens of opportunity cost. Not in an obsessive way that sucks all the joy out of life, but in a strategic way that ensures you're making intentional choices about where your money goes. Discovering what you really want. And let me tell you something that might surprise you. Once you start thinking this way, you often realize you don't actually want half the stuff you thought you wanted. That bigger apartment. The extra space would be nice, but is it worth delaying your financial independence by 5 years? That expensive hobby? It's fun, but there are probably cheaper ways to get the same satisfaction. This isn't about becoming a penny-pinching miser who never enjoys anything. It's about becoming intentional with your money instead of letting it slip away on things that don't actually matter to you. When you have clear financial goals and understand the power of compound interest, it becomes much easier to distinguish between what you want and what you really want. The bottom line, look, $20,000 isn't going to make you wealthy overnight, but it will fundamentally transform how you think about money and opportunity. It's the difference between surviving and thriving, between reacting to life and designing it. Start building that foundation today, because your future self is counting on the decisions you make right now. Trust me, they'll thank you for it.